Before you dive into this mystery, don't forget to like if you love emotional billionaire twists. Subscribe for more suspenseful love revenge sagas. Turn on notifications so you never miss a secret, a betrayal, or a shocking truth. Because what you're about to witness changes everything. Everyone at Westvale Enterprises heard the slam of the glass door, but no one dared to speak. Standing in the heart of the conference room, surrounded by stunned silence, stood Elena Hart, her hands trembling as she clutched the termination letter. The room still buzzed with the echo of the CEO's voice, cold, commanding, and final. "You're dismissed, Elena. Effective immediately." No explanation. No justification. Just those words. Elena's eyes met his. Damian Cross, the ruthless billionaire CEO known for his ice-cold business deals and even colder heart. A man who trusted numbers more than people, profits more than promises. And yet, for a few stolen nights, he had made her believe she mattered. Those nights meant nothing now. He didn't flinch. Didn't soften. Just stared at her as if she were a stranger, not the woman who had once laughed in his penthouse at 3 a.m., not the woman he'd once whispered secrets to in the dark. She had been his executive assistant, his right hand, his late-night confidant. But today? She was disposable. "Please," she said quietly, her voice cracking but controlled, "at least tell me what I did wrong." Damian didn't blink. "You overstepped. That's all you need to know." The humiliation scorched through her like fire. She could feel the stares of the entire boardroom, men and women in suits who had once praised her efficiency, who had once asked for her help with presentations and planning. Now, they looked through her like she was nothing. But Elena wasn't just broken. She was confused. They had been careful. Discreet. Or so she thought. But something had shifted in him in the last week, cold distance, unanswered messages, and then suddenly, this. A termination letter handed to her in front of everyone, as if to make a point. Elena stepped back, struggling to keep her dignity intact. She straightened her blouse, adjusted her coat, and swallowed the lump rising in her throat. "I hope whatever you're protecting is worth it," she said quietly. Damian didn't respond. The glass doors slid open as she exited. Behind her, silence. No one dared offer sympathy. No one followed. The city outside was loud, chaotic, but she felt completely alone. Back in her apartment that night, Elena sat on the edge of her bed, staring at the 2 pink lines glowing on the test in her shaking hands. Pregnant. Her stomach flipped. Not now. Not like this. The baby was Damian's. No doubt. But telling him? After the way he'd looked through her as if she were invisible? No. This child wouldn't be a bargaining chip. It wouldn't be a way to win back a man who clearly didn't care. She would not beg for his attention or mercy. She had already lost too much. The tears came then, not for him, but for the storm that had just been unleashed in her life. Her career was over. Her savings, barely enough to get her through 2 months. And now, a baby. She clutched the pregnancy test like it was a lifeline and whispered through her sobs. "You will not grow up unwanted. I don't care what he did. I will fight for us." Somewhere in the darkness, a part of her shattered. But another part, a quieter, steelier part, began to rebuild. He had taken her job, her name, her reputation. He would not take her strength. Not this time. 3 weeks after the firing, the city felt louder, crueler, and more unfamiliar than ever. Elena sat in a cramped waiting room at a women's clinic, her phone switched off, her thoughts scattered. The fluorescent lights above buzzed faintly, a constant reminder that her life was shifting faster than she could grasp. Her name was called softly. She stood slowly and followed the nurse inside. It was real. The second test confirmed it. 6 weeks along. The doctor smiled gently, explaining vitamins and early precautions. But Elena barely heard her. Her thoughts spun around one thing, Damian. The man who had dismissed her like garbage, was the father of the child now growing inside her. She thanked the doctor, took the folder of notes, and walked home in silence. Her apartment was cold, the radiator still broken, her fridge half empty. She sat on the floor and stared at the ceiling. She thought of the boardroom, of his voice, sharp, emotionless. "You're dismissed." He didn't deserve to know. He didn't deserve them. But still, would the baby? A child deserve truth. A name. A history. She shook the thought off and stood. There was no time to feel sorry. No time to wallow in heartbreak. Her savings were already draining. No job meant no insurance. No support. No backup plan. She would have to build a new plan, alone. Days blurred into weeks. Elena applied to jobs, not in skyscrapers this time, but cafes, bookshops, front desks. The moment employers noticed her resume, they asked, "Why'd you leave Westvale?" And when she said she'd been let go, the silence was always the same. Damien's reach was long. She eventually found a waitress job at a late-night diner on the edge of the city. Tips were small, hours were brutal, but the manager didn't ask about her past. He only said, "Can you carry a tray without dropping it?" "Yes," she said. "Even if I'm carrying a whole life inside me, too." At night, she'd lay awake listening to the hum of traffic below, one hand on her stomach, the other gripping a notebook where she jotted baby names and her deepest fears. It became her ritual, whispering to the tiny life inside her. "You weren't a mistake," she'd say. "You're my reason now." She never texted Damien. Never called. Not once. But she kept his name out of spite. Her child would carry her last name, not his. Her child would know love, but not disappointment. The birth came on a rainy Tuesday night. No family. No friends. Just her, a screaming hospital room, and a nurse who held her hand when no one else did. And when the cries echoed across the walls, Elena looked into her son's eyes for the first time and whispered, "You're safe now, Noah. He'll never hurt you." She refused to list the father's name on the certificate. The nurse looked surprised. "Are you sure?" Elena nodded. "Dead sure." Months passed. Elena worked 2 jobs. She lived in a shared apartment. Noah learned to crawl across the squeaky floor, laughing in ways that made every sacrifice worth it. And then something shifted. The rage didn't fade, it evolved. It became quieter, sharper. Like a blade left to sharpen in silence. Elena wasn't just surviving now. She was preparing. Preparing for the day she'd return, not as the broken girl Damien Cross had fired, but as a woman who had endured more than he'd ever know. And when she returned, he would never see it coming. Pain changed her, but motherhood transformed her. 3 years had passed since Elena Hart walked out of Westvale with nothing but her pride and a secret. Now, as the morning sun filtered through the windows of a modest co-working space in Brooklyn, Elena adjusted the collar of her navy blazer and typed the final line of her pitch deck. "Done," she whispered. Gone was the girl who cried into cracked pillows and worried over expired groceries. In her place stood a woman who had spent every sleepless night building something no one could take from her again, Heart Concepts, her own digital branding agency. She had started with local boutiques, freelancers, anyone willing to give her a shot. What they didn't know was that behind the soft voice and tired smile lived a fire, lit by betrayal, fueled by survival. Now, her agency had landed 5 corporate clients. 2 were ex-partners of Westvale Enterprises. It was poetic. And it was just the beginning. Her son, Noah, now 3, waited for her each day at a Montessori daycare nearby. He had Damien's hazel eyes, Elena's fierce determination, and a smile that made even her worst days worth living. He was her reason. And also her reminder. That Damien Cross had never apologized. Never even asked. But fate has a strange sense of humor. Elena's phone buzzed one afternoon during lunch. An email. From a recruiter. "A senior consulting opportunity at Westvale Enterprises is available. Your past experience and recent success make you a perfect fit. Discretion is essential." She stared at the screen. Her heart didn't race. It pulsed slowly, hungrily. Was this it? The door back into the empire that had discarded her? A chance to walk in, not as a pawn, but as a storm? She replied with a single line. "I'm listening." 3 weeks later, she entered the same building she had once left in shame, wearing heels sharp enough to silence the marble floors, and confidence thick enough to make the receptionists blink twice. She'd changed her last name to her mother's maiden, Elena Voss. Even her voice had matured, cooler, more composed. The pain in her eyes was gone, replaced with something that shimmered like ambition, but hid something darker. She was escorted to the boardroom, the same boardroom. And then he entered. Damien Cross. Still devastatingly poised. Still powerful. But tired. He barely glanced at her. Good. Let him look past her. Let him stay blind, for now. The presentation began. Elena spoke with command. No stutters. No emotion. She pitched a strategy that would not only save one of Westvale's crumbling international partnerships, but also place them in her control. She made them need her. And Damien, he finally looked at her. "Where have you worked before?" he asked, his voice calm but curious. Elena smiled. "Here and there. I've picked up a lot over the years." He narrowed his eyes slightly, something about her voice. Familiar? No. Couldn't be. When the meeting ended, the room applauded. He extended his hand. "Welcome aboard, Ms. Voss." She shook it. Firm. Unshaken. Unforgiving. He had no idea. That night, she sat with Noah by the window of their small apartment. The city lights blinked like stars. "Mommy got a new job," she told him, kissing his forehead. "Will you be home more or less?" he asked in his sleepy voice. "Less, sweetheart. But only for a little while." "Okay," he whispered. "As long as you're happy." She smiled, but her eyes burned with fire. "I'll be happy when he finally sees what he lost." Damien Cross couldn't get her out of his mind, though he didn't even know why. There was something about the new consultant, Elena Voss. Her voice echoed somewhere in his memories. Her mannerisms, her gaze, the steel in her calm. He knew powerful women. He had fired dozens. Promoted a few. Slept with fewer. But her? She was something else entirely. And she didn't look at him the way most women did. She didn't seek his approval. She was watching him, measuring him. In the weeks that followed, Elena embedded herself into Westvale's operations like a quiet storm. She saved a crumbling marketing deal. Rebuilt the failing Milan account. Executives whispered her name in admiration. Damien noticed. She was sharp. Too sharp to be new. Yet her resume held gaps, vague descriptions. And still, her instincts were elite. Who was she really? But Elena never let him close. When he asked her to join him for lunch to discuss expansion strategy, she declined politely. "Unfortunately, I have somewhere more important to be." No one had ever said that to him before. And it burned. What Damien didn't know was this. Every night after work, Elena returned to Noah, her son, his son, who waited with his favorite superhero pajamas and chocolate-stained smile. She'd kneel beside him, helping him with shapes, puzzles, bedtime books. And every now and then, she'd glance at his face and feel a strange ache. Because Noah was starting to look more and more like Damien. And one day, he'd ask, "Who is my father?" She wasn't ready to answer. Not until Damien was forced to look her in the eyes and realize what he had thrown away. One Friday evening, Westvale hosted a company gala. Elena was invited, as a rising star. She wore a black satin dress, sleek and bold, her hair swept back, a delicate necklace with Noah's birthstone resting just above her collarbone. She entered the ballroom like smoke. Damien turned the moment she did. Their eyes met, and for the first time, something in his expression cracked. She wasn't just a consultant anymore. She was a threat. A distraction. A memory he couldn't name. Later that night, they stood alone on the balcony. The city stretched beneath them. "Do I know you from somewhere?" Damien finally asked, sipping his scotch. "You seem familiar." Elena turned to face him, lips curling just slightly. "I used to work here. A long time ago." He blinked. "Really?" She nodded. "In another life." There was silence. "You fired me once, Mr. Cross," she added softly. He froze. "What?" She leaned in just a breath closer. Boardroom. Midday. No reason given. Realization dawned in his eyes like lightning striking ice. "Elena," he whispered. "Elena Hart?" She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Now you remember." He staggered back a step. "Why didn't you say?" "Because you didn't care," she interrupted. "You didn't even look at me that day. And I needed you to see me now. To really see me." He exhaled. "I didn't know." You didn't want to know," she snapped. "And there's still one more thing you don't know." He waited. Tense. Jaw locked. But she didn't give it to him. Not yet. She turned, walking back toward the lights, leaving him stunned on the balcony with nothing but the echo of her name and 1,000 unasked questions clawing at his mind. The moment of reckoning didn't come with a bang. It came with a whisper. 3 days after the gala, Damien Cross sat in his office, untouched coffee on his desk, phone ringing off the hook, mind spiraling around one name, Elena Hart. He'd fired her without a second thought. Now she was back, stronger, smarter, untouchable. And something about her eyes haunted him. Something more than betrayal. Something deeper. Meanwhile, Elena waited outside Noah's school, clutching a small paper bag and watching him run out with crayon-stained hands and stories of dragons and juice boxes. He looked so alive. So whole. She held him a little tighter that afternoon. Because soon, the truth would no longer be hers alone. That night, she wrote a letter. Not to Damien, but to herself. A letter of release. Of rage. Of surrender. She tore it up the next morning. She didn't need words on paper. She needed truth in his face. The final confrontation happened in the least dramatic place possible, his office. Westvale was quiet, after hours. Elena had timed it perfectly. She knew he'd stay late. He always did when he was losing control. She stepped inside without knocking. He looked up, startled but not surprised. Elena. You asked me once if there was something you still didn't know, she said calmly, shutting the door behind her. His throat tightened. There's more. She pulled a photo from her bag and placed it on his desk. A boy. 3 years old. Bright eyes. Hazel. His jaw clenched as he picked it up, breath caught midair. His name is Noah, she said. He's your son. Silence. Utter. Crippling. Silence. Damien stared at the picture like it had burned him. You had my child? I raised our child, she corrected. Alone. Without your name. Without your money. Without a second of your help. He looked up, thunderstruck. Why didn't you tell me? You didn't even let me speak the day you fired me, she said, voice low. You made me invisible. So I became stronger in the dark. He stood, chest rising with panic. I had no idea. No. You didn't care to have one. The next 10 minutes were a blur of excuses and questions. But none of them mattered. Because the truth had landed. And it shattered everything. I want nothing from you, Elena said as she reached for the photo. Not your money. Not your apology. Just your understanding. Wait, Damien whispered, grabbing her wrist, not forcefully, but desperately. Please. Let me meet him. She paused. He's not a revenge tool, Damien, she said. He's my son. Our son, he whispered. For the first time, she saw something in his eyes, something beyond shock. Remorse. Real. Unfiltered. Unfixable. But it was too late. She turned and walked to the door. You'll hear from my attorney soon. He deserves to know you, but not until I'm sure you won't destroy him the way you destroyed me. He didn't fight her. He just sank into his chair, eyes fixed on the photo, as if the entire empire around him had just cracked at the core. Weeks passed. The world still turned. But Damien Cross didn't. He stopped showing up at events. Delegated power. Lost interest in deals. Westvale began to slip through his fingers like ash. And one sunny afternoon, he stood outside a daycare, watching from a distance. A boy ran out. A boy with hazel eyes. Damien smiled for the first time in weeks, and whispered to himself, that's my son. He didn't approach. Not yet. He would earn that right. One day. Maybe.